Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Eldon live chat with the Chancellor Marvin Martinez. I'm Leslie, Editor-in-Chief of the Eldon News, and with me connected but not on video chat is Ashley Remaike, the Multimedia Editor. How are you, Chancellor?
Very good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm fine as well, getting by through this pandemic and everything else that's going on in the world. Yes, so before we start off, I wanted to ask you if you want to make any brief announcements, any news, that you would like to address at this moment.
Well, absolutely. Yes. Last week, I believe was a great 2 days for community college students. So number one, there was a federal court decision that provided a preliminary injunction on the CARES Act funding, and it did clear the way for us to give CARES grant funding to those students who didn't qualify before. So it's a number of students, including students who are undocumented, DACA students, non-credit students. So now we're able to do that. So the campuses are getting ready and preparing so that we can give grants to those students as well. So again, great day for college students. Then the following day, even a better day, where the Supreme Court ruled on a 5-4 decision to allow students to stay with DACA and the program to continue, and for them not to be deported. So again, another major decision. Obviously for students who are in DACA, that's one less thing to worry about is whether they were going to lose their status and possibly be deported, which is really terrible thing. So that also was, of course, great news last week. What we're also doing is we're trying to get ready for the fall semester. We just started this. We started the summer session on the 15th of June, and the enrollment has been really good. The enrollment for the fall looks great. So a lot of students have signed up for classes. So we believe that's occurring because of a few major reasons. One reason has to do with the fact that you have many students who are planning to go to UC Irvine or planning to go to USC and all these other universities, and they have decided, you know what, I'm not going to pay the cost of going to those schools and just be online. I might as well go to a local community college. Another major increase, I believe, of students has to be because a lot of them are not working. There's a lot of people who've been laid off. So they are looking for development of new skills. So they've decided to enroll at their local community college. So anyway, so we're excited about it. And again, the enrollment looks great so far. We still have 60 days to go. So we're not jumping for joy yet because there's still a lot of time. But so far, so good. Also, in relation to the fall semester, we're trying to identify some classes that we could offer face-to-face. We're also, because what happens if you bring some students back to face-to-face, that means that we probably will want to have some services available to them, such as see how we can open up the library, see how we can open up other services for them. Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense if they come to school, they go to the class, and then everything's closed. So we want to make sure that we're able to give them, some services. We are also looking to have some late start classes. They'll be face to face, and those late start classes, again, begin the second half of the fall semester. So, again, we're looking at of doing that. So as we begin to looking to open up some of our classrooms, we want to make sure that they are equipped in order to be able to do the class. So we will, of course, make sure that we're following social distancing, the physical distancing. We'll probably have possibly some plexiglass there in the classrooms to protect everybody. Outside the classrooms, you'll have the hand sanitizing stations, so Students leave, they'll be able to have their hands clean. Obviously, they'll need to wear face masks. After each class is conducted, our custodial staff will go into those classrooms and sanitize those classrooms, disinfect them, make sure that we get them ready for another class that may be offered there later that day. So again, a lot of work to do, but again, what's motivating us to look at opening and having some classes face-to-face, the motivation really came through a lot of the surveys that we did with students, where a number of students did say to us, that they can't learn at home. Learning at home is just not conducive. There's a lot of distractions. They don't have their own bedroom to use. They have to share it. It's not quiet. Obviously, it's not a library. It's a home. So, we want to make sure that whatever level of instruction that we offer, whatever method that we use, that that provides equity for everybody. We can't just focus on 90% of the students and say, well, the other 10%, forget them. No, we're not going to do that. We want to make sure that we also address the needs of all of our students so that all of them have a learning environment and that's conducive to them, achieving the highest success possible. So that was no doubt a motivation, of course, behind it.
Okay, so you did actually hit on 3 points that I wanted to get to for this interview. So I'll just jump right into the first one. So you did mention about, the CARES Act, that thankfully, we won. And with the recent ruling of, the Dreamers being eligible for the CARES Act funding now, is there any CARES Act money available for undocumented students and RSCCD students now, and how will the schools be distributing that money?
Good questions. So when we learned that the California community colleges had filed a lawsuit against Secretary DeVos and the Department of Education, at that time, we were asked by Chancellor Eloy Oakley that we should, allocate a certain portion of the funds and save that in case the case was won. We did that, so we have saved dollars from from the funding both campuses received, so that we could be ready for the possibility that the courts would rule in favor of the students. So obviously that did happen, and so the colleges have saved a portion of the grant in order to be able to use for our students. So I think what the steps that the campuses are taking is they're trying to now see how much that they can give those students, when they could do it, and so that's really what they're doing right now. So we feel real good. We'll feel real confident that those dollars hopefully will go out within a short amount of time, so the students could get them.
Yes, and will it be like last time where they'll be mailed to them, or how will that work?
Yeah, so it'll be just like last time. So it'll be mailed to them. Obviously, we're going to check to make sure that they still live where they told us that they were living.
Yes.
So we'll try to communicate also with them via email. And I know that the last time around, the offices, not only did they try to connect with them via email, but there were several phone calls made. And the last thing we want to do is to mail a check to an address where they no longer live. So we know students move around, and we know that happens. So we want to make sure that it can get to them. I think there were some occasions where the students just came to the campus to pick up the check. But again, the bottom line is we do have the resources. We did save money, and now we're going to try to, again, get the checks out to them as soon as we can.
Yes. And you also mentioned earlier that the Board of Trustees did decide that some SAC courses and classes will be held on campus during the fall semester. Is there a list in which classes have been approved to be in person yet? And is it available for the public? And, give us a little details more about that.
All good questions. Yes, so they are, I believe they've identified some of those courses. So the courses will not only be CTE courses, it would also be some general ed courses, some STEM courses, again, from English and math to some of the STEM areas. These are some of the courses that students usually have to take. So I'm waiting, for the campuses to tell me the times and so forth, the days. I know they want to get that information out to students as soon as possible. But, I can get back to you on that to see exactly when the information will go out to students so they know the classes that are available to them. As you know, the schedule of classes went out. And I think that schedule went out to students a good, a month ago, if not more. So some of those classes will be converted. So it's not, so it's not going to be obviously all of them. So we're not going to be, in essence, opening up 1,000 sections that are face-to-face. No, we're not going to do that. There'll be a small number, but nevertheless, I want to be able to, I want to make sure that, we're offering enough, and we want to see the enrollment in those courses that are face-to-face. Some of those courses that are face-to-face, we're looking at the hybrid mode, which basically means like maybe half the class will be on the campus, the other half of the class will still be online. Because, because you're going to have classes where students, I'm sure, will say, you know what, I enrolled in this class, it's not fair that it now has to be face-to-face. So for those students, we want to make sure that we support that. And one way to do that is to give them the option that, you could stay face-to-face, you could stay online if you choose to do that. But also you could do it face-to-face if you also choose to do that. So we're trying to be as flexible as we can, and to try to make sure that we're not putting the students in a position where they have to change their schedule at the last second. That's not the intent at all. Now, if a class is offered online, it starts online, it will stay online to the end of the semester. So we're not going to change that in the middle of the semester. If a class is hybrid, like I said, half of it face-to-face, half of it online, again, it will start on day one in that mode, and they'll stay in that mode until the end of the semester. So, so we don't want to create chaos by any means. Our goal here is to give students options. And in many ways, we're trying to respond to the concerns that they've expressed, in the surveys.
Yes, and it's good that you're taking that into consideration, because as the administration and as a school, we want consistency, throughout for the classes, for the students to have a set schedule so that they can do, other things like work and stuff like that. So it's very, considerate of you guys to take that into account. And then you also did mention about, the when you're making the announcements and, other, news that was going on throughout this last month. You did mention about, while these classes are going to be, on campus, you guys are going to take precautions. And I know that you mentioned, the necessary COVID-19 precautions, wearing masks, gloves, hand sanitizer stations. But are there any other precautions that the school is taking in order to ensure the safety of all, our students, staff, and faculty?
Yeah. So, for example, for services that we may have open, so admissions, that's a big office, and a lot of students go to the admissions office. So we're looking to purchase plexiglass. So students, in essence, there'll be that separation between the staff and the student. It's almost like going to the bank. All of us are used to going to the bank, going to the teller. There's plexiglass that's separating you, and so we're used to that. So we'll have something similar. It won't be as thick as what you see in the bank, obviously, but there will be plexiglass separating the staff and students in order to make sure that everyone feels safe, in order to make that work. So we're looking at, again, providing that level of equipment for the offices that students may be using. Again, financial aid, it's always another big one, admissions office. Obviously at the library, though I'm sure they'll need to go to the library to study. And so we want to make sure that we are, separating students, that we have dividers, that we possibly could have plexiglass so that, again, they feel safe. Um, so yeah, because that's what's going to happen. If you're going to open up a class or two, you need to probably have other services available. You can't just open up the class and not open up anything else. So we are looking at that too.
Yes, and I know that we did briefly talk about this in other live chats about like the maintenance staff, and I know there was a hiring freeze earlier. We talked about that too. So how is that going to work out once our school is back on campus? Part of the classes are
Right.
back on campus.
Yeah, so what the staff has been doing throughout this whole time that we've been closed, obviously they've been doing a lot of deep cleaning of those buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, as we're looking to schedule classes that are going to be open, we are obviously identifying the staff that will be needed to make sure those rooms are clean after they're being used by students. So far, we have enough staff. Our staffing levels are fine in order to do that work. And so my concern, though, will be in the area of athletics. So with athletics, the California Community College Athletic Commission, or as we call it, the Triple C2A, right? So I have to say the whole name. So the Athletic Commission, they provided guidance for all the colleges in the state as to how we conduct athletics. The bottom line is they said, to avoid having any contact sports in the fall. So what's an example of a contact sport? Football. Right? So they said, don't have football in the fall, and you should look to move football to the spring. Well, if you're familiar with the athletics programs that we have, the majority of the sports are offered, in the fall. So you have football, you have men's soccer, women's soccer, you have other sports. These are big sports, and there's a lot of students involved. So here's where my concern is. If you move all those sports to the spring, that's a lot of sports to offer in the spring. Because you not only do the athletic programs need the access to the fields for the actual games, but they need access to the fields and the courts for practices. So you could imagine everybody, we have, I think, Santa Ana College, I think at 12 sports, if not more than 12. So you could imagine literally all 12 sports being offered in one semester. That could create a lot of chaos in terms of scheduling, in terms of making sure that we have the custodial staff cleaning and disinfecting, because you have students will be running around, they'll be sweating, and they'll be that's what happens when you have athletic programs. So the good news is that it's not going to happen in the fall. The good news is going to happen in the spring. So it gives us time to figure out, do we have enough staff, as you were asking me? Do we have enough staff in order to address a semester where all sports will be offered literally one semester, along with the rest of the classes and everything else? Do we have our facilities? Do we have enough facilities for everybody to use at the same time? Because you'll have basketball also. Remember, you'll have men's basketball, women's basketball. You'll have wrestling. You have whatever other sport is out there. You have football in the spring. I can't fathom that, but we'll have football in the spring. Men's baseball, women's softball, men's soccer, women's soccer. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot, and the good news is at SEC, not all those sports are, they don't have as many sports as SAC. So I don't think they're going to have those challenges. But yeah, that's another item that we just been informed about. And we're trying to, of course, abide by the guidelines and see how we can have a plan for the athletic programs to happen. So.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we were some of the students were actually concerned about, because I know most of the students that I know are very interested in just, the sports side of, of our campus and stuff like that. So, and I know a lot of our students, like you said, we have a number of sports teams. And because of that, we have a lot of athletic students or athletes that are just concerned about that. But now that you mentioned that, it's great. Yeah. So I know that you also were talking about, just trying to figure it out during the fall about regarding, the athletic programs that we have. So is this kind of for the fall semester, is that going to be like your kind of like the testing part to see how we will be arranged, the cleaning and the maintenance part for the spring semester?
Yeah. So just coming back again to athletics. So both campuses now are working on plans on how they're going to meet those guidelines, and developing plans as to what is going to be needed if all those sports in essence have to be moved to the spring. Now they did give us the ability that we could offer in essence non-contact sports in the fall. So an example of a non-contact sport is like cross country, right? With cross country, they basically run out in the streets, so they're not using any one of our fields. I think there another example of one, and I don't know if we even have it at Santa Ana College. I should know this, but golf is another example of a non-contact sport. Tennis, right? But anyway, the big sports, the large sports, will probably, because they're contact sports, they'll be moved to the spring. So yeah, so I think again, what both campuses are doing is they're working on plans. How can they make this work? How will they coordinate all the scheduling for practices and the games? How will they work closely, obviously, with our custodial staff to make sure that the courts are clean and everything else? They'll need to work with the rest of the campus to make sure that we could also keep the classrooms clean and everything else that is happening on the campus. So that's what they're working on right now, Leslie. I haven't seen the plans yet. Hopefully, I'll get those plans soon. We will make a presentation to the Board of Trustees, probably not at the board meeting on July 13th, most likely at the August board meeting, where we will inform the Board of Trustees, let them know, here's the guidelines we received, here's how we're abiding by the guidelines, and this will be the plan in terms of how we're going to do this. So again, we have, everything's changing so much, as you know, Leslie. Even though we're 60 days away from the beginning of the fall semester, that the number of cases are spiking up again. Yesterday, we saw the largest number of people who died from the virus in Orange County. It was almost 30 people. And you're seeing spikes throughout the whole country. So given the way it's going, in 60 days is a lifetime today. So, we'll see where we are, and we'll see what actions the governor may take. If we continue to move in this direction where everything is increasing, is there a possibility that the governor may just say, you know what, let's just go into lockdown again? That could happen. If that happens, then probably everything that I'm telling you is not going to happen, because the governor may do that. And I would not be surprised if he moves in that direction, because, now that everyone is coming back, not everybody, but they're opening up the state, opening up restaurants and malls and the like. Obviously, you had a number of protests. They feel that the number of increases are also due to the number of protests due to the civil unrest that we still have. So we'll see what happens there. We'll see what policy directions the governor gives us. So we are keeping an eye on it. We're listening to his daily conferences that the governor has to see, is there anything new to share? But as you know, what he has shared the last 2 weeks has been, it's increasing. There's more people who are being hospitalized. There's more people who are dying. So it's not decreasing at all. It's getting higher. So yeah, we're keeping an eye on that to see, but if it does happen, so let's say the governor did say, okay, let's do a lockdown. We're ready. Again, we're not offering that many courses that are going to be face to face. It's a really small number, so we can shut those down if the governor gives us again the order to lock everything down again. So we're ready for whatever the governor wants us to do.
Yes, and I know that you just mentioned about like the spikes and everything. That's another point I wanted to get to. So as you know, states are reopening, and in earlier this, not this, yeah, was it this month? Yeah, earlier this month there was all those protests, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and during that time, you did release an official statement, of support for racial equality in our district, and so I would like to ask you if you can elaborate on your statement just a little bit more for those who are watching. And, after, elaborating, can you please, share your experience as an immigrant, as a person of color, and an educator, and how it affects your understanding of what's happening right now?
Right. I also want to add that at the last board meeting on June 15th, the Board of Trustees approved a resolution in regards to the civil unrest. What I really liked about that resolution is that it was really a mandate providing, in essence, there were action items. Action items that, in essence, are giving me and really the entire district directives as to how we address what's going on today. So let me give an example of that. So one of the directives was we should look at the kind of training that we do for our law enforcement as it relates to use of force, as it relates to cultural sensitivity, and also to take a look at the Sheriff's Academy. As you know, at Santa Ana College, you do have a Sheriff's Academy where we train literally every new officer that gets hired in Orange County. It's done through Santa Ana College. And so we want to make sure that they are trained, obviously, in the right way. So we want to be able to begin to work closely with the sheriffs, work closely with our law enforcement, so that we're not using chokeholds, and we're not using our officers are not putting knees on any one of our students' necks, right? Like what we saw with George Floyd. We certainly don't want to do that. So if you look at that resolution, it gave us pretty clear directives as to get moving on this, start to do something about it. Another example is for us to take a look at our curriculum. Is our curriculum helping students in raising their consciousness about cultures, about history, about what's happened in our societies, to make sure that the curriculum is free of anything that has to do with racism or sexism. And so we certainly want to be able to do that. Another example, because when you speak with our colleagues, staff who are African American, or staff who are African American, or faculty, I mean, look, at the end of the day, they would like to see that we increase the number of faculty members who are African American, that we increase the number of African Americans who are adjunct faculty or classified staff or managers. So we need to establish, programs that can move us in that direction, so that we're out there actively recruiting, we're out there connecting with people from these various ethnicities, and we're doing everything that we can to give them the best chance possible so they can work here for us. So, I think in many ways what's happened these last few weeks has been a wake-up call for everyone, because, everyone gets complacent. and status quo rolls in. And we should take a look at our practices in terms of how we recruit people. So just to give you an example, so the way that we recruit new faculty to apply for the jobs that we have, we send out a flyer, right? So you may, hopefully, you could go to our website to see if there's any jobs available, and you could look at the announcement and so forth. We go to job fairs and we set up a table along with other colleges and give out brochures and flyers about, for example, faculty positions that we have at either Santa Ana College or Santiago Canyon College. For me, I think we just need to go a little bit farther than that, because if we're going to recruit, for example, an African American who maybe lives in South LA, what will motivate them to come to teach at SEC in Orange, in the city of Orange? Will a flyer be enough? Will a brochure be enough? For me, the answer to that is no. We need to figure out a way where we're actively recruiting them, we're bringing them to the campuses, where maybe we're pairing them up with faculty, we're helping them understand how the selection process works and how to put together a resume, how to interview well. We're doing everything we can so that there's a connection that's made, that's authentic and that's real. And then if they want to apply for a position, there's already a connection. There's a motivation to want to come here because you're familiar with the campuses, you're here, you got a chance to meet other faculty members, obviously got a chance to meet students. We just, again, this whole situation we've had the last 2 weeks has given us the chance to look at our practices and how do we make them more proactive. So just to give an example, of how we do things and how we should probably look to do them differently. So you had asked me about, my own personal, look, all of us who are people of color, we've faced these things, we've faced these challenges. Look, if you look at, there's 115 colleges in the California community college system. There is, I think now, I believe 17 of the 115 colleges are presidents who are Latino. There are, I think, 4 chancellors who are Latino, and one of them. So there's not a lot. There's not a lot of people, right? So I think the point I'm trying to make is that we have a long ways to go, and I think if all of us look at our careers to see how we got here, a lot of it really happened because I had people who kind of put their arm around me and gave me some guidance and said, hey, this is how you get through these hoops. This is how you get through these obstacles. It's like an obstacle race, right? And this is how you get through them so you can make it to the end. And this is how you deal with issues of race. This is how you deal with issues of discrimination that you're probably going to face because you are a person of color. So, so all of us in our careers, have confronted these things. We've faced them. All of us have been told, you can't be a chancellor, you can't be a college president, you're not the right color, you're not the right face, all of us have heard that in our careers. And so I think the question really comes down to is that how do we create a much more of a systemic, how do we create much more of a systemic way to get individuals of color to be, faculty members and to be classified staff and to be administrators? What we can't do is to just pray that it happens. It can't just happen by accident. It has to have a purpose of how we do things. So again, I think that it's a really good question, Leslie. It makes you reflect as to, how did I end up here? What made me so special, right? What happened? And you know, a lot of it was just, I just ran into the right people. And many of those individuals were people of color who kind of advised me and guided me. Um, and they were the ones who kind of taught me the ropes, so to speak. I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. There's just no way, because right now, you know, if you're fortunate to run into those individuals, you know, you're lucky. You're lucky, you know, and I did. I was very lucky. I ran into those individuals, but I know a lot of other colleagues who are also people of color that didn't happen to them, you know, so they didn't have, you know, those advantages. So we need to do something about that. You know, we can't, all of us just end up here by accident. And there has to be a much more of a systemic way so that we create the parity, you know, across the board. But again, you know, to have a system which is the largest community college system in the country, where you have 115 colleges, and to have only, you know, like I said, 17 of those presidents who are Latino, you know, it should be a lot higher than that, obviously. Um, so yeah, so we have a long ways to go at the state level, let alone here at the local level. But I'm committed to changing that. I mean, look, at the end of the day, after 5 years, you probably won't be here today, 5 years, Leslie, but after 5 years, if the number of African Americans has not moved, it's really small, by the way. I think it's more, you know, I think the number of African Americans probably combined in our district for all of our employees, it has to be less than 5%. I would say probably more like maybe 2 to 3%. And if it hasn't moved, then it's on me, right? It's on me as the leader of this district, and that we haven't moved the needle at all. So I think that, like I said, you know, right now, you know, there's a lot of staff, a lot of faculty, and others that I've spoken to who want to do something about it. They want to change the direction. You know, so I want to take advantage of that goodwill. And why do I want to do that? Because, you know, in my experience, those windows of opportunities usually close. And when they close, everybody goes back to status quo. And then it's hard to change anything after that. Right now, there's a lot of goodwill. People see that, look, we got to change. We got to figure out a different way to increase the number of people of color who are, you know, who have positions throughout the district. And so, you know, I'm going to try to move the ball as quickly as I can, because again, just upon my experience, this window of opportunity is not going to last 5 years. If it could last a year, that'd be great. But usually they just don't last too long. So that's my long response to you.
It's okay. Well, thank you for sharing your experience, you know, and elaborating more on, you know, your statement regarding this situation that's been going on, you know, throughout our country. So, you know, thank you for sharing your experience. And you know, personally, I can, you know, really relate to what you've been through too, because as a person, a woman of color, you know, we all go through all these things, and you know, it's great that you're trying to use, you know, your position as chancellor, you know, to make changes, you know, for our school. So thank you so much. So we'll move on to any you know, social media questions. Ashley, are you on the line?
Hi everyone. So the first question I have from social media is, are there any updates on the potential graduation date?
You mean on commencement, like a commencement ceremonies?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so both campuses are working on identifying a date in the fall. I know they're working on what that will look like, and I'm trying to identify some dates. And as you know, Ashley, all this is tentative because of what's happening today. You know, as I was explaining to Leslie, as we move through, you know, over the next 2 months, we'll see where we are in regards to all the additional cases and the additional situation with COVID-19, because it is getting worse. So, but yeah, both campus, I don't know the dates, but I'll get back to you as to what those dates are. But they are working on the fall. Why are they doing that? Well, again, when we survey students, a lot of students said, if you could have it in the fall and it could be a regular commencement and face-to-face like the ones that we're used to, they'll be happy to come back. So again, only so much that we can control here, but I know that they're working on those dates.
Great, thank you. And our next question from social media asks about international students. So will international students have any kind of support or something like reduced tuition fees or anything the school can help them with?
No, we're not looking at the reduced fees. We're certainly not going to raise them. So we're keeping fees the same. I think the biggest challenge that a lot of the international students face, specifically a lot of the students who maybe come from China, is whether getting through Homeland Security in our country, because they're as you know they were providing a lot of obstacles before, by the way. Now they're providing even more obstacles, throwing a lot more obstacles in the way of those students that are coming from China. So there's only so much that we can help them there, because that's really at the federal level. But we are in communication with them. We've also have offered to do a distance ed program with them, between us and them, if they're not allowed to come into the States. So right now, it's just an interesting situation, because we don't know whether they can get through all the various hoops and obstacles that the Department of Homeland Security has established for a lot of our Chinese students.
Well, thank you for that information. And another question from social media we have before we go back to Leslie is, has there been any additional funds or allocations for money for sanitation of the school when we return?
Yeah, so we have spent a lot more money in purchasing additional disinfectants, additional sanitizers. You're beginning to see, if you visit the campuses now, a lot of offices have those sanitizer stations in those buildings. We have them here, of course, at the district office, and I know that the colleges are getting those sanitation stations. So all those things cost money. We purchased a lot more face masks, gloves, and again, these are additional costs, because we didn't have that a year ago. There was no need to buy additional face masks or additional disinfectants or hand sanitizing stations or plexiglass or anything like that. So so we've had to spend a lot more. We're also working with FEMA and to see how we can get reimbursed for some of the purchases that we've made. But yeah, it's it is what it is, and we are trying to find a dollar so we can purchase those additional items. But we're not saying no. We know that we have to spend it. We have no choice. If we're going to have some more staff come back to the campus, return to the workplace, or students returning to the classroom, we need to have all that. So
Great, thank you both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just to continue our conversation that we were having earlier, you did mention that the Board of Trustees and schools in general are trying to, work closely with, our law enforcement here in Santa Ana, or wherever the schools are, and mostly with our security, trying to, make sure that they're following protocols and stuff like that. So, staying on these safety concerns, given that there are at least 2 of our armed security officers that have histories of excessive force, either by themselves or their partners, are there any plans to, review hiring, procedures of new security officers, or to reevaluate those currently employed?
So a good question, Leslie. So I think that the first question you asked what are we doing as we hire new officers? Have we improved, their background checks? And so we certainly are. We certainly want to make sure that we're not bringing officers here that will be a danger to our students. That's not the intent at all. So the good news here is that we're different from other colleges in that our law enforcement agency is ours. So other colleges, when I used to be the president of East LA College, who provided security for us was the LA County Sheriffs. Trying to change the LA County Sheriffs is like very hard, right? So we're very lucky. We have a great chief. His name is Michael Toledo. And so he's been great in terms of responding what's happened this last few weeks, and also forcing us to review our practices. I think, again, you asked a great question, which is, how has the practice of how we do background checks to make sure that we're hiring officers that are going to be sensitive to our students, that don't have a history, that don't have that we are looking at all that, trying to make sure that they don't have those complaints that will alert us that this person could be a problem if we hire them. So we are taking a look at all that. We are looking at the training because, when you're an officer, you're trained all the time. So our, so we did have in the training previous to the civil unrest that we had, where chokeholds were allowed, and and officers were being trained to use that. That probably holds true for the rest of the country because everybody was using them, and everyone knew that should be made illegal. So we have taken the action here that we're not going to use that. We're not going to use chokeholds. So again, this whole process has forced us to take a look in detail as to how do we train our own officers? How do we train them to understand issues of cultural sensitivity? When we hire them, we're looking to hire from people who live in this community, because many times there is a connection between those individuals that are hired who live in this community, because they're going to be more sensitive to it. They live here, they understand it, they know who lives here, as opposed to hiring someone that lives very far away from here that may not have that connection. So we have to take a look at everything. So that's what's been going on. As you know, Santa Ana College probably does the majority of training in this region for first responders. So we train a good number of the new officers. We have a fire tech academy where you train a number of the new firemen and women. You have an EMT program, emergency, which is the paramedics. So we also do that training. We have a large nursing program where we train nurses. So we are looking at the curriculum and training that we do for all those individuals to make sure that they're given training in cultural sensitivity. They're given training in terms of how to work with these communities and understand the challenges that students face. And, because when you're a student, you're going to have days where you're really stressed, right? You may not have gotten the grade that you received and you're really upset. And, and sometimes where you're stressed or you're upset, you end up doing things that you should not. Or you may end up saying things to people that you should not. So our officers are, want to make sure that they understand that, our job is to maintain security. Our job is not to beat up students and to put chokeholds on them or to put their knees on their necks. That's not what we're here to do. So part of the board's resolution was for us to go through the training and go through how we hire officers with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we look at everything. So again, it helps having a really great chief like Chief Toledo, who said, absolutely, let's do this right away. But yeah, because, as you know, these protests have hit home. There's been protests that started on the corner of 17th and Bristol, right
Yes.
across the bridge. So it's home. We know that the digital media center was vandalized, so it has affected us. So we don't want to be ignorant of what has happened. We want to make sure that we're proactive. And at least for me, from my perspective, Leslie, is, again, here's a window of opportunity. It may not be here 5 years from today. It may be a different campus. It may be a different culture. So I want to take advantage of that as much as I can, and try to change things as much as I can in the next few months.
Yes, and I know that it was kind of like it is a sensitive question, especially right now with all these protests still going on. It is something that that we do need to look at, and it's great that you guys are trying to make those changes to the hiring process of our security officers and everything, so, and how we train our security officers as well. So thank you for that. And then another point that you mentioned that I wanted to get to was about the budget and the 2020-2021 budget. So I know last time in one of our live chats we did discuss this a little bit. But there's been recent updates in this last month. So the governor's final budget agreement for our community college includes, like, I guess $4.4 billion in new revenues, and it also increases the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee by $1.8 billion.
Mhm.
However, community college are still facing a $10.6 billion loss compared to 2019.
Right.
Are you relieved that for at least this year there won't be massive cuts? And what do you see in RCCD's budgetary future?
So look, we're supportive. I'm supportive of what the governor and the legislature agreed, which is to defer cuts, because the cuts that we're thinking about were going to be devastating, and I'm excited about the deferrals, but at the same time, if you look at the fine print, it's also saying that if the Congress does not agree to a federal stimulus by October 1st, that then 700 million plus in dollars will need to be cut, from our budget. So you watch the news just like I do, and I'm not seeing anything yet that where the Congress is trying to reach any agreement on a new stimulus. And the question really comes down to, is there going to be one by October 1st? Right now, it doesn't look like it. Hopefully things get better. Again, just the way the Congress works in their timeline. In August, the Congress takes their August recess, which basically means that they're not in Washington, D.C. They're home, and they don't get back until after Labor Day. So when they get back from Labor Day, they're not going to meet as much between Labor Day and Election Day. Why? Because they're all out there campaigning. They're trying to get reelected. So that part does have me a little bit fearful, and can we meet that deadline of October 1st that's been established in agreement between the governor and the legislature? But also, when you defer monies, it doesn't mean like the deficit goes away. So here's an analogy to that you could consider, and kind of the way I'm feeling. So really, what the legislation and governor basically agreed to is they said, look, let's just get another credit card to pay off this other credit card that we have, right? So what does that mean? Yeah, you may be able to pay off this credit card, but you still have a debt, right? You still have debt that you need to pay. And that's kind of what's happened. They kind of just kicked the can down the road and said, well, let's not think about it yet. Maybe we'll leave it to the future. But that future can be here as soon as October 1st. Also, as soon as July 1st rolls around of the year 2022, again, we could see a huge major deficit. So again, one of the answers that the governor and the legislature really keep hoping for is that we get a new federal stimulus. And I think without that, you are going to have a lot of challenges with the cuts. So I have been in communication with our unions, and I have been in communication, of course, with our administration and the board of trustees as to what is it that we can do in order to avoid going to make cuts, because that's the last thing I want to do is lay anybody off in this economy. Because when you lay somebody off in this economy, there's no jobs out there, Leslie. We still have a high unemployment rate. So we want to make sure that we come up with ideas in order to lessen the number of layoffs. So we are in constant communication. We are working together to avoid going in that direction. Again, to make a long story short, I'm happy about the deferrals because I would hate to have a $20 million cut that we would have to make here at the district. But it hasn't gone away. The debt will still be there. So we'll be lobbying like everybody else to Congress to please give us a federal stimulus. Otherwise, news is not going to be great. But hopefully we'll have more news to share as time goes on, and hopefully the Congress will come back together, because this is not only affecting community colleges, but it's also affecting city governments, county governments, state governments in California, and really the rest of the country. So it's a pretty bad problem. So hopefully the Congress will come back and somehow give us something.
Yes, and we're hoping for that. So I'm going to jump to our last point of our interview. And it's about the affirmative action that was reinstated. So I know California voters now have the opportunity to reinstate the affirmative action in public education and public employment after ACA 5 passed in the state Senate yesterday. Yep. So what are your thoughts on this, and will the district make an official endorsement for affirmative action in public education and public employment? And if it passes, what types of changes will we see throughout RSCCD community?
We haven't decided yet what we're going to do in order to respond to ACA 5. I can definitely give you my personal opinion. I think that it's great. By the way, that's still, when I first started as a freshman at UCLA in 1982, here I'm really dating myself, Leslie. So I was an affirmative action student in 1982 when I went to UCLA. I probably wouldn't have not been able to go to UCLA as an undergrad, as a freshman, if it wasn't for affirmative action. So I'm supportive of affirmative action. I think it gives everyone an opportunity, specifically students of color, will give them an opportunity to experience what I've experienced. And I think that when you go to a school like UCLA, and now, as you know, it's the #1 public institution in the country, is it going to help you if you graduate from UCLA? You better believe it. You better believe it does. It does. And that school, it will benefit a lot more. So I'm supportive of affirmative action. I've been a benefactor of affirmative action. I think will be a great thing. In terms of how it's going to affect us, it'll definitely continue to push us even more to make sure that we have individuals from all the ethnicities, fully represented here at the college and here at the district. And I think that's a good thing. I think, we want to make sure that we have faculty of color, well represented, and classified staff and managers. So we want to make sure that we're moving in that direction. Obviously when it passes, as you said, it passed the state Senate. It hasn't been signed off by the governor yet. I would anticipate that he will sign it. So if it is signed, obviously, the board will talk about it. I have a lot of confidence in our board that they will give me a mandate to figure out how to implement it. And I don't know if you were able to participate or see the discussion they had about the resolution that they approved at the last board meeting. And if you would have heard the comments that we're making, it would leave you feeling great, because the board is very supportive of trying to move us in this direction. And actually, a lot of our board members, many of them are people of color, they talked about their experiences and how that, this is the time. This is the time to try to make some significant changes. This is the time to recognize that issues of racism have also affected us, and we should do something about it to change it. So, again, I have I have the confidence that our board will look at ACA 5 very seriously to see how we meet its guidelines, how we abide by it once it becomes law. And they will give me a directive to also move in that direction, so that we can be in compliance with ACA 5. So, because we are, in many ways, we're a state agency. Community colleges are part of the state, so I can't say no to a law. I have to say yes, right? But again, once it's approved, I will make sure that we're in compliance, in every way that we can. So, so hopefully, the governor supports it. And so I think that's what's left now for him to. I think it's made it through the assembly, and I definitely made it through the state senate, like you said. Now, I think it's probably going to go to the governor for his signature.
Yes, and we'll have to be waiting for that moment in order to, have that. So, so that's all the questions I have prepared for today for this interview. Do you have anything else that you want to comment on? Just discuss a little bit before we close.
Yeah, there's one more bill that is being discussed at the legislature. This is a bill that will mandate all CSUs to have ethnic studies as a requirement. And so, this bill actually was introduced about a year ago. So a year ago, didn't really have a chance. Obviously, everything has changed a year from today. So it's moving. It's moving through the legislature. And if it is approved, then we will have to respond to it as a college, and as a community college system. And that we may want to have something similar here, so that students can complete that requirement here. So if you transfer to a CSU, you don't have to complete it at the CSU. You have completed it here. So we think that's a good thing also. We think it's, at least just my own personal opinion, it's about time that the CSUs have this as a mandate and as a requirement. So the author of the bill is Assemblymember Weber. That's Webber. She's from the San Diego area. And I think it's AB 4160. I think that's the number of the bill. And again, it's moving. And if it does get approved and signed off by the governor, then you'll have a requirement for ethnic studies at the CSU. So it will have an impact on us as well.
Yes. And just to move on with our social media questions, Ashley, are you still on the line?
Hi, nothing more from social media.
Okay. So this will conclude, our live chat for today. I know July, on the last Thursday of July, we will have another live chat, and we will discuss further anything that happens in the month of July. So yes, for everyone who's watching, thank you for tuning in, and thank you once again, Chancellor, for taking this part of your time during the summer and to have this interview, to have this discussions. I know some of the questions, were very, there were big ones, big decisions were made throughout the month, and, it was nice for you to, take the time and, clarify and discuss any of, further questions that any of our students or our audience have. So thank you so much.
But you're welcome. And again, Leslie, take care. Have a great 4th of July and summer. Likewise with Ashley and Sarah and Charles. All right.
Yes.
So
All
we'll
right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And we're no longer live.